Europe is running out of electricity, and if you live in Europe, particularly Italy, Spain, France, Poland, Germany, or even outside Europe in the UK, then you felt a hole in your wallet paying for your monthly electricity and gas bills. And to say it mildly, Europe is on its way to a widespread energy crisis. And there's a few reasons why this is happening, some of which could have been prevented and others that were simply too unlikely to even be considered at the time. The best way to understand this crisis is by first understanding the primary source of heating in European homes, which is gas. The reason behind this is that gas is a convenient way to heat European homes and help them withstand the -12 to -30 degrees Celsius nights they endure over the winter. So what's the problem with gas? Well, as it stands right now, 1 in 4 homes across the continent are now having to choose between heating and food. 44 million Europeans have stated that they can't afford to adequately heat their homes, while 31 to 50 million are classified as living under energy poverty. That is often described as the inability to keep homes adequately warm. Alright, so gas is expensive, but why is it expensive, and why did Europe choose it as the primary source of heating? Well, that is a harder question to answer than it might seem. I mean, the entire continent is in a crisis, and the 27 member states of the EU, plus Great Britain, are scrambling to deal with this issue that's been years in the making. Governments in Spain and France have resorted to tax cuts on energy and handing out subsidies to vulnerable households. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi has pledged $5.5 billion to offset the burden for households and businesses. Sweden even vowed to ease the strain for 1.8 million homes. But all of this functions as no more than a bandage on the bigger issue. There is a perfect storm brewing in Europe's energy sector, and right in the middle lies the people and their pockets. Alright, so what's going on? Why are energy prices increasing in Europe? Well, for Europe to be in as bad shape as it is, several things had to go wrong. And they did. The first thing to go wrong was the unpredictable health crisis and its consequences. When the world shut down, businesses and industries did the same. Maintenance for gas fields and pipelines decreased as stay-home orders meant that only a select few could work on-site at a time. Coal mining was nearly impossible, stunting the extraction of fossil fuels. Therefore, we had less demand, and as a result, primary energy consumption fell by 4.5% in 2020, which might not seem like much, but it's the largest decline since 1945. Now, the problem with reducing our energy consumption is not the reduction itself, of course, but the inevitable surge in demand that comes afterwards. This is where we fast forward to 2022. The world is turning back to normal, and so is the demand for energy to fuel businesses and industries. That surge alone can put a strain on any energy sector, but Europe has a very unique challenge. See, it has vowed to radically reduce its fossil fuel use, something that other continents and countries doesn't really have to deal with. This is a major challenge because you can't ramp up production of renewable energy sources as quickly as you can with fossil fuels. It's simply easier to burn more coal than it is setting up a new solar farm. This means that Europe is in a terribly disadvantaged position because as soon as demand increases, you have to find something that can supply it. And as mentioned, the EU has been admirably intentional about reaching its common goal of being the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. 9 EU member states, including Belgium and Sweden, are now completely coal-free, with Sweden closing its last plant in 2020. And if you take a look at the EU's energy mix for the first half of 2021, you'll see that clean energy accounted for 2/3 of the EU's energy generation. Renewables like wind, solar, and hydropower took up 39% of generation, while nuclear, which is cleaner than traditional fossil fuels, took up 27%. This is an increase from 2019's figures as coal-generated energy dropped to 14%, which sounds great and all, but some members of the EU have made some, I don't want to say poor decisions, just decisions that have consequences. And what I mean by that is that on New Year's Eve 2021, the Brockdorf, Grönde and Gundremming C nuclear reactors were decommissioned as Germany said goodbye to 3 of its 6 nuclear power stations. Should the remaining 3 plants shut down, which Germany plans to do by the end of 2022, 12% of the nation's electricity will be no more. This means a very reliable source of energy that can easily be turned up or down depending on demand has been taken out of the equation. So what did Germany do to fill this void of sudden energy need? Well, Germany didn't think that far, as they don't have solar or wind farms lined up to fill this demand. So what is the easiest way to meet energy demands when you don't have a plan? Natural gas, of course. And this is where we run into the next problem. See, the Netherlands, Europe's biggest source of natural gas after Russia, is leaving the trade. They started shutting down their massive natural gas field, Groningen, back in 2018, with full closure scheduled for 2022. Even the UK reduced its natural gas supply when in 2017, Centrica shut down the region's largest natural gas storage facility after it was deemed unsafe and unprofitable. I guess you can see where I'm going with this. When the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, energy has to come from elsewhere, and when it can't come from Europe itself, it has to be imported. This is the biggest issue with renewable energy: reliability. Renewables are newer, harder to store, and are so irregular that they're not at the level where they can handle the changing demands that gas, coal, and nuclear meet. You can't just turn a dial and increase energy generation. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature. Now, many say that this energy crisis would not exist had the EU invested in clean energy early on. And they have a point, but this is not the reality we live in. So how does the EU meet its energy needs instead? Well, in 2019, the EU imported nearly 90% of its natural gas from outside the bloc. This 90% share is split up between some key players. Russia dominates at 43%, Norway follows with 23%, and Algeria, the UK, and the US round things out with 12%, 5.5%, and 5% respectively. Having a single country account for such a large share is worrying and unwise, since it's not much more than a single switch that has to be flipped for Europe to be in an even bigger crisis than it is currently. So, to ease some of the strain, the EU has turned towards importing liquid natural gas, or LNG for short. In October 2021, 49 US tankers carrying LNG were brought in to offset this imbalance and try to keep the current energy crisis under control. The problem with LNG, though, is that competition is fierce from other large countries and continents whose economies are picking up at a rapid pace. Take China, for instance. They've been buying LNG for the past 5 years to clean up their controversially filthy air. This means Europe is often outbid for LNG, which naturally drives the prices higher and makes it a far worse option. It's difficult to see what the EU's plan was, but it's fair to assume that the EU was banking on moderately diplomatic relations with Russia and increased use of renewable sources to offset the absence of nuclear and coal. But as I will explain now, these plans fell through dramatically. See, right as the energy crisis started, Russia reduced gas flows into Europe through the state-controlled Gazprom by 25%. Many saw it as a political move that would put pressure on Berlin and the EU to approve Putin's dream project, the Nordstream 2. This ambitious and highly controversial Russian plan is 10 years in the making. It consists of a 1,230-kilometer pipeline that flows through the Baltic Sea from Ust-Luga here in Russia to Lubmin all the way here in Germany. The project was completed in 2021, but Berlin has yet to hand out the final necessary permits. Alright, so the problem is that Nord Stream 2 doesn't line up with the EU's climate goals, and more than that, it puts more power into Russia's hands during a politically tense time. See, the Ukraine-Russia crisis is at the center of most European geopolitical struggles, and with good reason. But it also affects the energy crisis directly. If the Nord Stream 2 project isn't accepted, there's a fear that Russia might switch off the gas taps, or worse, if the Kremlin faces further sanctions over their activities towards Ukraine that it is currently invading, Europe's main gas supplier would be cut off. This would leave vulnerable people in EU nations to foot the bill. For some EU states, Russia is the only gas source. Take a look at Latvia and the Czech Republic. 100% of their natural gas comes from Moscow. Hungary follows with 94%, while Slovakia and Bulgaria depend on 85.4% and 72.2% respectively. These guys simply can't afford a heavy energy sanction on Russia. So all in all, it's a pretty tricky situation, and most leaders and countries are at the mercy of nature and hoping for an early summer. The truth is, Europe can survive this energy crisis prices on a base level. I mean, the lights won't turn off for its industries and transport infrastructures. We most likely won't see black skylines in the near future either. And with the US and Middle Eastern LNG sales as a backup, should Russia's actions lead to a cutoff, Europe will probably scrape by. It's more of a financial issue. Gas can be made available, but the cost trickles down to the consumer, and not all of them can pay the price. What's clear though is that this crisis is urgent. Hopefully, Europeans and its leaders can find a sustainable solution that doesn't choke an already fragile economy. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.